Hi everyone, this is the Lisa B Interior Design YouTube channel, and like I mentioned before, we'll be covering lots of different subjects, and this is my first podcast channel, and I'm going to be having lots of fabulous guests, and today we have our first guest who's an artist, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name's Imogen. I'm a nail and thread artist, and I have a studio here based in Zelig.
So Imogen, so I was going to ask you a few questions today so that our viewers know about you and your journey and everything else. So the first questions I'd like to start with is, what age did you recognise your talents? And what age did you recognise your talent for art?
Yeah. So if I'm honest, I think I was always very creative and artistic, even from like a really young age. I remember in primary school, my teacher at the time said that I was a better drawer than her, and so I think I've always just like had that skill, and it's just kind of evolved from there really.
That must be great if your teacher's actually saying that you're a better drawer than her.
I know. Don't mean to, I feel like I'm blowing my own horn here, but I remember that really well because it was such a compliment. You don't forget these things, do you?
Definitely. Yeah, that's great. So it just shows that you were skilled from when you was very, very young then. Fantastic. And can you explain to us about the method of tools that you use when you start creating your art?
Yeah, of course. So I use a hammer because I initially tap the nails into board with the hammer, and then I wrap the thread around the nails. So yeah, that's the method that I make. Like later when we go down to see the work, I'll be able to show you the
Which we'll be going to Imogen's studio later on, so that you can actually see her pieces hung up and see them at their best, to be honest. So I'll be looking forward to that later on. So because it's nails and threads, do you ever get any injuries while creating your art?
Yeah. And I used to get a lot more injuries. Obviously, over time, I've gotten a lot less because I've gotten used to the way that I work.
Yeah.
But if I'm honest, I can hammer my thumb, and that happens quite often. I've noticed I get injuries more when I haven't made work for a really long period of time. So I'm out of practice.
Yeah.
But then obviously as I get into my routine, get into my rhythm with making work, the injuries do subside after a bit,
Aww. So I can ask as well, back to injuries. So the thread, do you ever get burns or anything?
Oh, you know what? I do actually get, sometimes I can get like, I can dig the thread into my finger accidentally.
Oh,
yeah, like if I'm trying to think what causes that. But yeah, as I'm threading around, because I wrap the thread around my fingers to hold it into place, sometimes I can get those, like it is like a burning sensation. Yeah. So yeah, that does happen.
Aww. But still, you create amazing art.
Yeah,
so.
and I've got really hardy fingers now.
I can imagine.
Because of it, exactly.
That's great. And right, so I was going to ask a little bit about your education. So you received a first class degree from Kingston University in Fine Arts and Art of History in 2013. Can you tell us a little bit more about university?
Yeah. So I loved my uni experience. On the fine art course, you have just complete creative freedom. They really encourage you to make, and so I did. I just made as much as I could. I experimented with lots of different materials. I've always loved like craftsmanship and making something like tangible with your hands, something physical with your hands. And although at university I wasn't working in thread, but I was working with lots of other materials like metalwork. I did stone carving. I did like moulding and casting things, and so I loved just making things with my hands, and I was really encouraged to do that at university. The only thing is, what they don't teach you at uni is how to make your art practice financially sustainable. So I came out of uni and I was like, how am I going to continue this? I can't afford to continue this. So I did kind of abandon the art practice after.
I'm glad you actually mentioned that, because I think that goes with a lot of university.
Yeah.
But myself, interior design, you learn it, but nobody tells you how to actually carry on after and make a career out of it.
Exactly.
So I think that's something that they should actually start doing, rather than just like dangle the carrot and then it's
Yeah.
like, right, off you go and just see what happens kind of thing.
Definitely. I do think they don't tell you the business side of things.
100%,
and,
yeah.
and that's what I'm learning on the job, basically, is all those other... You've got the creative side, which is like the fun side.
Yeah.
And I can imagine you have the same sort of feeling with your design work. That's being really creative is like the really enjoyable part.
Yeah.
But then there's 50% of... That's only 50%. The other 50% is the business side of things, where you've got like the marketing, the finances, all the admin, the research, the development. There's all these factors that go into your art practice that you just don't know about until you actually
and then you have to learn it, and then fingers crossed you get it right.
Exactly.
So but you seem to be doing amazing till this day.
Trying.
So. You're not trying, you are. You are. There's going to be quite a few students that will be watching this podcast. So could you express to us about when how it was being away from home when you was at university, like, if it was fun or if there's any downtimes?
Yeah. I mean, I really enjoyed it. I loved it. I loved being away from home. I loved being with my mates. So for the first year, I was in halls of residence, which are just loads of fun because you're surrounded by people your age. If I'm honest, you are partying. The first year you're partying a lot, and then the second year you kind of crack down a bit, and then the third year is when you really, there's no going out. But I loved it. I really did. I worked hard and I played hard, and I think that's the best thing to do at uni. You can play hard, you can go out, you can enjoy yourself, but also I think as long as the work matches the partying, or you do more work than partying, then you're fine.
Brilliant. Because some people, they're probably, I want to go home, but you didn't ever have that.
I had that on the very first day. My parents dropped me off in my halls, and within half an hour I was calling them to pick me up. It almost immediately after they dropped me back, and they refused. They were like, no, we're not coming for you, you've got to do this, you've got to see it out. And never looked back since. That was the best thing that they could have done for me, was refuse to come and pick me up.
So if they did, would you have actually gone back home?
That's the thing. I think if they'd have come to pick me up, would I have actually gone to uni? And would I have stuck it out? I probably wouldn't have done, because I would have felt comfortable being back home with my parents. There was that moment of homesickness. There was, but I'm glad that I stuck it out. My parents were hard on me and said, we're not coming to collect you. And then after that, I ended up going out with my flatmates. So it was, and then there was no looking back.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So it was worth it.
At least you had a really good experience.
Yeah.
I believe that you have many clients that come to you to ask for specific pieces of art. Can you reflect more and tell us about why people wanted art created, or even why they picked you as well? Was it because of the method, or can you tell me a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So I do get a lot of commissioners request either portraits of a loved one, so it could be a daughter, of themselves with a loved one, so it might be partners. I get a lot of dog portraits, dog commissions, but people love their dogs, don't they? So the commission requests that I get tend to be very emotional. It's all about love, and the people that they tend to request will always be a loved one. And I think in terms of why they come to me, because I've thought about this in the past, why my work over a traditional oil painting, and I think it's because I think my work appears more unique. I think, if I'm honest, there's a lot of painters out there. There's a lot of oil painters, portrait painters out there, whereas I feel like people come across my work and they think, I haven't seen something like that before. And so I think that's why they kind of choose me over somebody else. And I think as long as I can create that likeness, and there's a lot of pressure there with commissions, making sure that who you're creating looks like the actual photo, because I always work off a photo, and that is the biggest pressure, is making sure that you capture the essence of that person that you see in that photo of them. So that is a really big challenge. I also think as well, when it comes to portraits and art, your art will outlast like my art will outlast me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It will live on
which is
beyond
nice, yeah.
me. And I think in a way people like a portrait as like an heirloom or something like that, because it will always outlast like generations in that family,
Yeah.
and it could be something that is passed down in generations as well. So yeah.
That sounds beautiful. Just put that together, that your artwork will live past you.
Yeah, but it's like anything creative, like your design, like anything,
Yeah.
but it has a life beyond us, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I can afford to bet it like that, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
beautiful. I see that you have lots of different size art pieces, small and really like massive portraits. Can you tell me how long it takes you to create a piece for one of your art pieces?
Yeah, of course. So how long I spend on each piece is dependent on the size, but it is also dependent on like the complexity of the piece, so how detailed that piece is. So I can have a piece that's like 1 metre by 1 metre, and that can take longer than a piece that's like double its size, because it's just far more detailed. And so I also do have to like factor that in into my costs as well.
Yeah.
So something that's quite small might look overpriced, or something that's larger might look too cheap, but that's because of the detail of each individual piece. When it comes to the large scale pieces, I like to work quite intensely on them, so I like to work on them in as short a period of time as possible, because they're so big, they are a bit of a nightmare to work on, like sitting in the studio. It is a bit of a nightmare, so what I try to do when I'm working on a large scale piece is make sure that I take time off work, and I can do really long days, really long hours in the day, and like get it out, get it complete within like 3 weeks to a month.
Okay. Yeah. So when you say take time out of work as well, so is your art something that you do alongside another?
Yes, well, I work part-time. I work full-time on my art, and then I work part-time in my jobs as well.
Brilliant.
So I work as a facilitator, like running community-based arts and crafts workshops. So it's quite creative, and I love that. And I'm also a youth worker. I work at a youth centre that works with young people with high-functioning autism, and I feel that I like the variety that kind of thing brings. I need the money, I do. My art pays for itself. So anything that I make from my art, I invest back into my art. And then it's my part-time jobs that pay for my life, basically. Yeah. And I do like the variety of working part-time, working with people, working with young people, and then working on my art, which is quite isolated, and I work by myself a lot, but I quite like that, and I like the fact that the two types of work really balance themselves out,
which is great.
Yeah,
and it's a sensible thing to do as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so as an interior designer, I have to make time to sit down, get in my headspace and get my work done, and I could be sat there from anything from 2 to 5 hours. Could you tell me how you get yourself motivated before you actually sit down to do hours and hours of work?
Yeah, so if I'm honest, it's a coffee. I need my coffee to get my head working. But I also, so when I'm doing the thread work, I love listening to a podcast. So I'll have my coffee, I'll put on like my favourite podcast that's on weekly, and that really helps me get in the zone. If I'm painting, so often with my work, before I put any nail or thread on it, I will often paint the board. And because the paint work is far more like expressive and intuitive, I like to listen to music when I do that. But then when it comes to the thread work, because that's very technical, I'd like a good podcast. Those two things really get me in the zone to work.
Saying that, I think music's really good. Music helps me to work a lot quicker, but at the same time, I like to work in silence as well.
Really? I can't work in silence.
Yeah, like complete silence.
Yeah, see, I think like for me, I find silence really scary. I always have to be listening to something. Always some sort of background noise. But if I'm listening to music and I'm like doing admin or laptop work, I have to listen to music with no words in. I don't know if you're like that.
Right.
Or
I do have a type of music, so but if I'm doing design work, like 3D design work, I love garage.
Oh really? Like something
It's-
high
it's fast
paced.
and
Yeah.
but then I can't listen to slow things because it just makes me want to stop.
Mm.
So if I listen to high stuff, but the thing is I have to stop drinking coffee, so I can't rely on that no more. But coffee, I whack a lot of work out. I've stopped coffee.
I rely on it far too much. I have cut
It
down.
works.
I have cut down.
I'm not a coffee addict anymore, but it does work.
It really does.
So I was looking at a little bit of your work online and actually come across some images of an exhibition on triangular prism. Can you tell me a little bit more about that exhibition that you would?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I really wanted to push my work out into the 3D, like make it more sculptural, more three-dimensional, because my work, it is 2D. It's very, it's very close to the surface, and I really wanted to push the thread out. And so, if you look at my work, everything is made up of triangles, because everything's made up of straight lines. You look at the structure of the image, and it's all triangles. So I thought, okay, how am I going to make my work 3D? Well, triangles in the 3D form are pyramids. So I was like, right, I will just hang a load of pyramids in the space. And I wrapped tulle around the pyramids. Tulle is like a meshing, it's a fabric, but it's a mesh-like fabric with lots of holes in. And if you hang it in the space, it almost looks transparent. So I would stitch thread, I would stitch my faces into these pyramids on the tulle. And so they almost looked like floating faces in the space. But I'd split the face up into lots of different pyramids, and I hung the pyramids in the exhibition in a way that meant the viewer had to walk around the pyramids to physically piece these faces together.
Very clever.
Thank you. Well, what I want to do, because I really liked that idea, I'm going to explore that further, but rather than tulle, the mesh-like fabric, I'm going to use clear acrylic. So I've got an exhibition coming up in Manchester in October, and we're gonna explore that further and experiment with clear acrylic, and I'm gonna stitch into the acrylic instead. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah.
So with the tulle, is that something that you created yourself, or is that something that is actually done by stitching onto it?
So I haven't seen it done before, and what I really wanted to find was a fabric that was almost transparent, and I went to a local fabric place. It's called Barry's Fabrics. It's amazing.
I know, I've been there.
Have you?
Yeah.
I love it there.
It's Birmingham City, but yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
The prices are good as well.
Yeah, they are, and the staff are so lovely there as well, and it is like a treasure trove full of fabric.
It's huge.
So I just went crazy, and I was like, right, what kind of fabric can I find? And I found this tulle.
Yeah.
And because the holes are so large, you can stitch into it. So I haven't seen that method done before, but it was something that I explored myself.
That's where she goes. She's created something new. So yeah, that's great. So now we're going to go and take a journey down to Imogen's studio, because Imogen is actually based in the same building as myself at the Custard Factory in Digbeth, Birmingham. So we're going to take a little walk down there, and you get to see some of her amazing art pieces.
Thank you. They look like they're professionally done.
Everyone's going to see what that. Oh, so we're at the amazing Zenith building in the lift.
Going to the studio.
But still, we're in a really, really funky building, aren't we?
Yeah, it is cool. It's very artistic, I think the building is.
Yeah, but I think with Zelig as well, they purposely only had creative businesses here to keep that. So.
And they really encourage that.
Yeah, definitely. Like in a minute when we go out, if they are, people are playing like table tennis or one, right?
Ah. Mention it, it's not.
Yeah, it's gone.
Not there.
The table tennis table is usually down there, but it's gone.
I like that this is a really cool. really beautiful.
It does. So you can see a little glance in there. Just to go to.
Oh my goodness. What would you like to do actually?
Right, so, which you probably saw in previous videos, so this is the Zenith building and this is the art gallery area. So this is where you can see Imogen's work and this is where she actually creates all her lovely pieces as well. So we just take you over to one of her largest pieces and I'll leave Imogen to tell us about it.
Yeah, so this piece was kind of my first, so this is the biggest piece I've ever done. This is 2.4 metres by 2.4 metres and I had to make it in two parts. And if you look really close, you can see where the two parts are. But this was my attempt at exploring more of the body. Typically I do faces.
Oh yes,
yeah,
yes,
I do like
just let you know
portraits.
just where you've got the shoulder here.
Yeah, and like this hand is the first hand that I've done, and I actually quite like how it looks. So I do kind of want to explore that more.
Yeah.
And then here you can see, so it's all very detailed around this side, but then round here it's become more abstract, and I wanted it to look almost like, you know, like shattering glass.
Yes.
Where she kind of shatters and like fragments up here until it almost disappears into nothing. And when this piece was originally made, we created the pyramids. Yes,
that you was talking about earlier on.
Yeah.
That was on the exhibition. Yeah.
So these triangles then started turning into pyramids. It was like they were physically coming off the artwork. But
Yes, we will show you some pictures of those.
Yeah.
Of the
pyramids.
Yes.
Yeah.
So can I ask as well, because in my uni journey I had to do lots of painting and things. Did you find it difficult to draw faces at first and hands, because they're always the most hardest things to kind of learn?
Yeah, I did, but I really like eyes. I love making the eyes.
Okay.
So even though it was challenging, you'll notice that especially when you go into the studio, I really do focus on the eye, because I find that the most interesting part of the face. It's the most interesting part of a person, because you really, yeah, exactly. But you really see like the essence of that person in the eye. So even though it is quite complicated, I really enjoy it. Yeah.
And you can tell, because honestly it was absolutely amazing. And is this one of your biggest pieces that you've done?
Yeah, so this is the biggest that I've ever done. Eventually, I am doing a public-based commission. I can't really talk much about that because it's all in the works, but that piece is going to be 3 metres long. So it's going to slightly outsize this, and then that will be the biggest piece that I've ever made. For now, this is currently the biggest piece,
And can we ask who this person is?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so this is actually my flatmate. And she's got a real incredible personality, like a very vibrant person, strong personality, and I kind of wanted to reflect that in the artwork itself, because it's quite like a powerful piece. And so I wanted to reflect her personality in the artwork.
That's fantastic. So you guys, you can come down to the art gallery at the Custard Factory Digbeth and you can actually see this for yourself. Okay, so visit and come and have a look at Imogen's artwork. Okay, so Imogen has a few more art pieces on show. Here's who's going to let Imogen show you.
Yeah, so we can just go into the studio. Yeah, of course.
I'll show you these. It's nice and simple. I love the hair detail as well.
Yeah, so this piece I made in 2021, and what I really wanted to do here was, you can see if you look into the detail, I've taken away parts of the thread, so the viewer kind of has to do more work and literally join up the thread themselves. So you can see where I've put in the nails, but I've left out parts of the thread, and it's to kind of break up the piece and make it look a bit more fragmented and a bit disjointed. And you can see I've done it here as well, in the hair too. But yeah, this piece I made solely, so it's a white background and then I've just made it just out of black thread, and I've just tried to get as much depth and detail just in the black thread alone.
Is that one of your little fires there as well?
Yeah. So I'm holding an open studio next weekend. Everyone's invited.
Yeah. And can we talk about this one?
Yeah. Okay. So this piece, I think this might have been the first ever piece I did with the nail and thread technique. So before this piece, I used to do embroidery, so just stitching into fabric. And then this was the first piece where I really started experimenting with nail and thread.
So is nail and thread something that's always been about, or is it something, I mean, how did you come?
Yeah, I have seen it done before, but not to the detail and the depth that I'm doing it in.
So
it's far more.
So you teach yourself, or did you actually?
Yeah.
Okay, so you didn't go anywhere and learn this?
No, yeah, I just taught myself it, yeah. And look, I saw something similar, and I was like, all right, I'm going to see if I can teach myself this technique. And I've noticed that as I've progressed with the technique, my work is becoming far more detailed and far more interesting and complex. And so I'm really sort of honing that craft and like developing that skill. But yeah, this piece I made back in 2019, so this was one of the very first pieces. But it's still one of the most impactful ones.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it is quite eye-catching. It definitely does the job, and I've noticed people outside will see it and it will encourage people to come in, which is exactly what you want.
And I love the beauty spot as well.
Yeah.
It's cute.
Can't miss the beauty spot.
I can ask, has she got eyeshadow on?
Yeah.
So this is quite a glam lady.
Yeah, so this is Edie Sedgwick. So what she would do is, she was Andy Warhol's muse back in like the 60s. And she was stunning. She was just this beautiful model, but she had quite a tragic life. And she would wear heaps and heaps of like dark eye makeup, really heavy layers of mascara, and she'd sleep in it and then just top it up. And every day she would just top it up a little bit more. So it became almost like,
Good job.
Yeah. But as a result, she'd have these really kind of like dark, intense eyes, and she's got really big eyes as well.
Yeah.
So it worked quite well for her.
You definitely capture it.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm capturing just here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this piece is a smaller version of the piece that we've just seen. The exact same model, the exact same image. You can see the really like dark, heavy eyes here, the beauty spot as well. But here, to create the background, I put in nails around the edge of the board. You can see the nails go all the way around.
As well.
And so what happens is I just thread between the outside of the piece and then the face itself, and that's what creates this really sort of heavy black background. Yeah. Okay, so come through here. This is the studio. Well, this is the shop of Digbeth Art Space, and then here is my studio. So yeah, this is the studio. You can see here, this is my little shelf of eyes. You know, I said I'm fascinated with the eyes. So this is like a selection of eyes that I've made over the years. I just love working on the eye. And then yeah, so this is my work, yeah.
So Imogen, this artwork is absolutely amazing, and I love the way that the artwork comes off. So can you explain more about that and where this method comes from?
Yeah, of course. So the idea behind this piece and the thread physically coming off the board was I wanted to make my work more three-dimensional. If you look at the thread work against the board, because of the length of the nails, the thread, it kind of comes off slightly off the board anyway. So it kind of sits between, it's not quite 2D, but it's not quite 3D. So bringing this thread out and attaching it to the surfaces around it. That's my way of like pushing it out into the 3D space. And with this work as well, I really wanted to make the work play with the surfaces around it. And so obviously here I've got like 2 points that come out onto the wall here, but I've been experimenting with this style loads in the past with multiple different work, and what I love doing is playing with the surfaces around it. So you could have this coming from the ceiling, you could have it really coming out of the piece, or like coming from an opposite direction. And so yeah, I find that really exciting. I just like experimenting with
Honestly,
it.
it's lovely the way it's been presented.
Thank
Very,
you.
very clever. Very clever. And we've got some more here.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk to us about this here? Because
Yeah.
I can see it's kind of a half done.
Yeah. So this shows my process really well. This is a commission. So it is like parents with their child. So yeah, it means a lot to them. It's a very like emotional piece. It's actually a present. It's a birthday present. So here you can see like all the different points of my process. So you can see the start of the thread work. Now here, I'm literally just drawing with thread. So I'm drawing the outline of the image. I'm going to really layer it up in lots of different colours. But for now, I just need to like draw. Yeah, exactly. It's almost like a pencil drawing. Okay, yeah. And then eventually, I'll start adding like layers of colour, and that's almost like the paint in a way. Yeah. But yeah, here if you look really closely, you can see it starts as a drawing, and then I attach that drawing to the board behind, and then with a nail and a hammer and just one nail, I tap the holes which show like the contours of the face. So I'm going over the drawing in these nails, I'm creating these holes on this drawing. And then I remove the drawing, and I always use the drawing as a point of reference. And then I'd hammer the nails into the board and then wrap the thread around the nails as the very last part of the process. So yeah, that's my full process basically.
Fabulous pieces, and I can see that these have got colour added to them as well. Can you tell us more about this, and especially this one? Like, you know, what was the idea of the colours? Where did the ideas of the colour of the background come from?
Yeah, so this is something that I've been experimenting with like really recently. These are very recent pieces, and I wanted to create quite like expressive, chaotic splatters in the background with paint, and these marks, these like very explosive marks, really contrast with like the thread work. I find the thread work very like detailed and precise and very technical, whereas these splatters are quite expressive and intuitive. I just kind of roll with it. And what I've done is I've deliberately created, so I'm really learning about colours at the moment, and like colour matching and seeing what colours like work together and fit together. And I've noticed something that I've only just really worked out, that like oranges and reds really contrast very well with like blues and greens. So so there's like this burnt orange background and then like gold splatters. And it's those two colours really contrast with the thread work, which is mainly made out of different tones of blue and green. And so that's a very deliberate move. You know, I'm very cautious about the colours that I use, and I really consider them as well. And so I wanted to make sure that I had different colours so that they would contrast with each other nicely. And there's like almost like a tension in the work as well. And it also means that you can see both layers really easily. You can see these splatters in the background, but you can also see the like strong thread work in the foreground as well. And yeah, this piece, very similar. Here I've actually started playing with spray paint. I think this is the first and only piece where I've started spray painting. So the paint that I use is a mix of emulsion, acrylic, and now spray paint as well. And I really kind of wanted to be really playful and get these like splatters involved. And I wanted to have quite pale neutral tones in the background, like you've got pinks and greys and like a mint green here, and again those are really like deliberate choices of colour because I wanted the threaded image in the foreground to really stand out as well.
Yeah. And then again, I love this, so you can see the detail in this face is unreal.
So yeah, that again, with this piece, I'm kind of creating two different types of work at the moment. The first is this very painterly background of the work that I've just shown, but then the other is this type of work where every single detail, every single shadow or area of light is made solely just from the thread work. So you can see like where the like cheekbones are, there's like slightly like lighter layers of thread, but then the eyes, the nose, the mouth, you can see that they're made out of like 3 different hues of pink and purple. Altogether there's about like 6 or 7 different coloured threads in this piece. Even though I think at first glance it just looks pink or it just looks purple, but actually when you look really up close, you notice that there's far more details and far more thread work involved.
Yeah. And then we have the lovely Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, so here, very similar to this, all the details are made solely from thread, but I deliberately chose colours of thread that I felt reflected her kind of aesthetic.
Yeah.
So you've got like hot pinks, you've got golds, and you've got this really beautiful peach as well. Because I thought that those were colours that like reflected Marilyn's personality or like her style.
Fabulous. And can we have a look at these ones through here?
Yeah. Yeah, so this piece is actually 1/2 of a piece. The original is matched with this one that I've shown you previously in the studio, and they're mother and daughter. So the original positioning of the 2 pieces, they bridged like the corner of the gallery, and then they were like looking at each other. And the whole idea of the piece was to sort of kind of explore the relationship between mother and daughter. And so you can see here her expression is she's actually telling her daughter off, but then here she's looking lovingly at her.
Yeah.
And then the same with the daughter. You can see here she's got quite like a cheeky expression on her face, because I remember at the time I took the original photos myself. And she rolled her eyes at her mum, and it was quite funny because her mum then told her off, and then she was acting really cheeky. Yeah. So it's that kind of playing with that interaction of mother and daughter.
Okay. And can I ask, do you have a favourite piece?
Yes. So I would say I love this one. I think it's like definitely really explosive and really like playful and fun, and it's really vibrant. And then I also think maybe this one, because I'm starting to play with the 3D and it's starting to become more of an installation based work. So I really like this piece as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm going to ask Imogen a few questions which might help you and inspire you on your journey. So I would like to ask you, can you name 2 people who inspired you on your journey? This can be artists, family, or just anybody you know, teachers.
Yeah. So I have thought about this. I would say my mom is definitely a source of inspiration. She's very creative, she's very focused, she's got her head screwed on, and I do find that, I try my best to take after my mom. But then also another person I would say is an artist called Sophie T, and I would recommend anyone looking her up online. What she does really well is she really knows how to monetize her artwork, so she really sees her art practice as a business. And I think I really do take a lot of inspiration of the way that she works and the way that she engages with her customer. And I think any artist wanting to make their art practice financially sustainable, I would 100% look her up. She's like incredible. She's been making art since, I would say, maybe 2017, maybe 2016.
She's still quite new.
She is quite new, but she's making millions now.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Millions. Yeah. So she's a massive source of inspiration. Yeah.
Yes. And how has the industry shaped you as a person today?
I think it's really built up a sense of resilience. I do think you do have to be resilient in this industry. It's really hard. And the longer I'm doing this, the more I'm realising how hard it is. And so I think you've got to have passion for what you do, 100%. You've got to be passionate about what you do. You've got to really believe in what you do. Like, you have to be your biggest hype man.
Yeah.
Like, I really believe what I'm creating is unique, and I think there is a customer for it. And so I feel like I've just gone off on a massive tangent now, haven't I?
That's what we like.
But yeah, I would say passion, maintaining that passion, believing in yourself, that sense of self-belief, but it's made me massively resilient as well, because it's the long game. You've just got to keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah.
And what advice would you give to anyone inspired to become an artist?
Okay, a sense of resilience. You need to be resilient. It's really hard work. Making a career out of this, it's not going to happen even in a couple of years. It could happen up to 10 years. And I'm still on that journey. I'm still not where I want to be, but I'm in a far better position than I was like 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So I know things are moving forward. And so in terms of what advice I would give is, just keep believing in yourself, keep going. It will be very hard, but you will get there eventually. Yeah.
And like with any creative career, you just have to. The way I see it is your work speaks for you. So if you don't keep going and not keep producing work, whether it's interior design, whether you're an artist, whether you're anything to do with the creative industry, your work has to speak for itself. So it's something that you have to keep doing, stay consistent and stay fresh as well.
Yeah, consistency, exactly.
100%.
Yeah. Maintaining that consistency, because the moment you do it, people start to forget about you.
This is it.
Yeah.
So on the Lisa B Interior Design channel, I always have a special couple of questions for my guests at the end. So, I'm going to ask Imogen my first question. So, if the power was in your hands, what would you change about the world today and how?
So, I would, you have the super rich and then there's the rest of us. I would redistribute the wealth from the super rich to everybody else so that everyone has equal opportunities. And I think specifically in the art world, this is something, there is a lot of lack of opportunity for those who don't come from a wealthy background. It's very dominated by the white male, and I think that is slowly starting to change. You are seeing changes in the art world, but I think by redistributing that wealth and giving it to people from lower socio-economic backgrounds, it provides everybody with the opportunity to potentially become an artist.
Fantastic. And where can listeners find you?
Okay, so I'm on Instagram. My handle is Imogen Morris Art, and I'm also on TikTok as Imogen Morris Art. And then I have a website which is www.imogenmorrisart.com. So
There we go.
very simple.
So Imogen, I'd like to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for my first podcast, honestly, you've been amazing, and all your work and everything, and honestly, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
And this lady's got a great future. I know she has. Well, come on, you're doing something completely different, and it's all beautiful as well, so thank you.
Thank you.